some issues that have come up during the consultations that I did this week, and also on the immigration interviews that I went on this week. So um, I recently covered a green card interview for a colleague of mine who was not able to go to the interview. So the clients hired me to represent them at the interview and also to prep them beforehand. So I guess my advice to clients is if you have a lawyer who's representing you in your case, please be honest with them about everything that's happened. Don't leave any details out. Um, don't lie. And likewise, don't try to hide things or lie to immigration as well. Immigration has ways of finding out about certain things. They have access to certain records with other government agencies. So, just as an example, what happened at an interview that I recently went in on. So, I prepped the client. I asked them all the questions about eligibility to adjust status in the US. There were some inconsistencies in the way the client answered the questions on the form, and what she said during the prep, which kind of raised my eyebrows. Um, and some of the questions had to do with whether or not the client had ever been arrested, convicted of a crime, et cetera, et cetera. So even after the prep, um, at the interview, there was new information that only came to light because the immigration officer brought it up. And when the officer confronted the client with the information, the client just basically admitted that there was one other criminal incident. Um, and when the officer asked more questions, such as why were you arrested? What exactly happened? The client was a little evasive, which clearly raises red flags. So I think the client was really lucky because the officer was pretty understanding and she wasn't one of these hardcore, really difficult officers. If the client had gotten one of those officers to conduct the interview, the outcome would have been way, way worse. So the officer asked questions, like a series of questions to try to find out how it is that the client ended up getting arrested because the client wasn't being very forthcoming. And that is another separate issue, right? It doesn't even matter if the reason that you were arrested or if you have a conviction, if it's not a very serious offense, then it might not make you deportable. But there's this whole separate issue about being candid with immigration, meaning being truthful. Um, if you're applying for an immigration benefit, such as green card, citizenship, work visa, what have you, um, you don't want to be dishonest with immigration. So even if, let's say the conviction in question is really minor and it won't have any substantive negative effect on your eligibility for green card or citizenship, if immigration thinks that you were being dishonest or evasive, they could deny your application just on that basis alone. And the officer actually said that at the interview because a client was being kind of sassy with the officer and said, well, why are you asking me all these questions? Don't you have this information already? So the officer very kindly said to the client, the reason why I'm asking you is because I want to see if you're being truthful to me, right? I mean, she could have said it. I mean, in my opinion, I think she said it in a very tactful, respectful manner. Um, the 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 basically, I think that ultimately immigration will be approving the green card application because the offense in question was not that serious. But you don't want to get yourself into a situation where you um, are not upfront with your attorney or USCIS, and then USCIS knows, right? And they have access to certain records. When you apply for an application, they will conduct a background check, right? Which is usually done by FBI. So if there are any hits, if anything shows up with FBI background checks, immigration will have a lot of information. They may not have the actual documents, such as a certificate of disposition, but they can see things like date of arrest, and beyond that. So you just don't want to get yourself into a situation like that, right? So after the interview, I kind of told the client, um, it's really not right to withhold this kind of information from your attorney during the prep. You really should have been upfront so that I can represent you as a client, right? If I'm left in the dark and I don't know about crucial details or facts that happened, um, that's not going to put me in a good position to represent and defend my client. So, um, that happened this week, and there was another consultation also this week where the whole issue of fraud came up as well. So another client consulted with me because he um, is now a green card holder, but he became a green card holder through applying for asylum. His asylum application was approved many, many years ago. He's been a permanent resident for many years, but he came to me because he said that he had consulted with other immigration lawyers who told him it's not a good idea to apply for naturalization because of something that he did. So I asked the client, well, what is it that you did? And he said, well, when he applied for asylum, he omitted some facts that he thought would be hurtful or that he thought would lower his chances of getting his asylum approved. Well, it turns out that those same facts that he withheld from immigration are questions that are asked on the naturalization application form. So if he wanted to apply for citizenship, which he very badly does, he would have to answer those questions. And if he answers those questions truthfully, they could lead to immigration finding out that he committed fraud or misrepresentation all the way back to when he submitted his asylum application. And the thing with naturalization applications is that this is where immigration oftentimes really goes digging and digging around, looking for reasons to see if someone is deportable, to see if the green card application was issued correctly. There are times when immigration grants someone a green card when they should not have, sometimes because the client is not eligible and immigration somehow missed an issue or a fact. So he's now kind of created the situation where, because of something he did many years ago, 20 something years ago, he now can't apply for naturalization because if he did, chances are immigration would find out about that um, misrepresentation from a long time ago, and they will probably try to place him into removal proceedings. So, generally it's never, ever, ever a good idea to conceal, submit fraudulent information, to lie, to misrepresent immigration. Because even if you are approved for the benefit that you're seeking now, you never know if years later down the road, if you want to sponsor a family member, for example, or if you want to apply for citizenship, immigration can find out at that point. Um, you know, I'm thinking back to another case that I had a few years ago where a client of mine who's a green card holder was put into deportation proceedings because it turns out that his father sponsored him for a green card, but he was sponsored in a family preference category that was for unmarried sons of the parent. In reality, the client was already married, and he did not disclose this to the U.S. Embassy when he showed up for his immigrant visa interview. Um, the embassy didn't catch on, they didn't know, so they issued him the immigrant visa. Client entered the US on the immigrant visa, was sent a green card and had been a green card holder for many, many years. He traveled back and forth in and out of the United States, never had an issue until one day, CBP at the airport put two and two together. Somehow they found out, they must have been looking around at documents, and they figured out that by the time the client showed up for his interview at the embassy, he was already married. But on the visa application form, the question that asks, "Are you single, married, divorced?" He had indicated single. So that is misrepresentation, it's fraud. Um, Ultimately, CBP placed him into deportation proceedings. And the client claims that he wasn't aware, that all the paperwork was handled by his father. Um, but do you really want to put yourself into a position like that where, now you're facing removal proceedings, and now you have the burden of convincing the immigration judge that you did not commit fraud? It's a pretty common pattern that I've seen. And in some cases, there is a waiver of fraud that can be available if you are placed in deportation proceedings, but these waivers are not guaranteed. Even if you qualify to submit this fraud waiver, doesn't mean that the immigration judge can grant it, depending on what type of immigration judge you have, especially if you have one that has a high denial rate, then it's a shame to be at risk of losing your green card and being placed in deportation. Um, so I'm always saying to my clients, I sound like a broken record at this point. It's never worth it to lie or to submit fraudulent information or to conceal the truth from immigration. Eventually, they usually have one way of finding out. And even if they never find out, how would it feel to be living in fear that one day immigration can find out and come knocking on your door? It's a terrible, I would never want to place myself into that kind of position. Let's see what else happened today or this week. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I'm still getting a lot of consultations from clients who are just um, really super anxious and afraid of traveling, or what would happen to them if they were to leave the US and then travel back. There's this theme that a lot of clients are afraid that they might get detained and deported. And we're talking about clients that have legal status, um, clients who are green card holders, clients who have work visas like H-1Bs and L-1s. Um, and when I ask the client where this anxiety is coming from, they tell me that it's because of everything that they see on the media. They are hearing all these reports of ICE or CBP just detaining a lot of folks. Um, and I had to really advise the clients that although, yes, there's many, many scary things happening right now, um, sometimes what the media reports is not the full picture. Um, there might be facts that the reporter may not be aware of. And a lot of reporters, I mean, they're not immigration lawyers, so they may be kind of describing events with not 100% accuracy. For sure, there are definitely a lot of individuals that I think are unfairly being arrested, detained, and deported. I'm not at all saying that that's not happening, but I think that one of the side effects of all the media coverage about this happening is that it's created this blanket fear, and it's really crippling people and preventing them from living their everyday lives. So, you know, my general advice to clients who are really afraid is consult with a lawyer because, the media's portrayal is sometimes a little inaccurate. Um, Maybe a green card holder was detained because there were underlying red flags, right? Not saying that those red flags justify the actions of the government, but it's not that all green card holders are being detained upon traveling back to the airports. If that were the case, I mean, um, I think we wouldn't, like I haven't had any of my clients who are green card holders just be detained for no reason other than they are a green card holder. Another question I've been hearing a lot at consultations is, I'm a green card holder, but I'm originally a citizen of Venezuela, or, name the country where there are a lot of citizens being targeted by immigration. The mere fact that you are a citizen of, let's say, Venezuela, but you are a green card holder, that does not equal that you will be detained if you travel outside the US and come back on your green card. Absent any other um, circumstances, such as someone has a criminal record or someone has a previous record of being in place in the deportation proceedings, then it might change things. But just your country of citizenship, is not reason enough for CBP to detain you upon returning from a trip abroad if you're a green card holder. So, um, I think that a lot of this kind of media coverage is really creating like a paranoia and really, really preventing people from exercising their rights, that they have according to their immigration status. Green card holders are permanent residents. They are allowed to permanently reside in the US until and unless an immigration judge says otherwise, right? Um, I'm even getting these questions from US citizens. So, um, I know it's hard because this is, a very tough time right now in the immigration space, but for myself, what has helped me is I limit my intake of the media and I don't, I like have built a buffer around myself. I kind of try to stay on top of everything that's happening, but I'm not getting sucked into this, doom scrolling and reading all of the, awful things that are happening. I mean, a lot of this has to do with preserving your mental health and well-being. And, generally, I find that the less time you spend on social media and media and the internet, that's kind of helped me stay focused and continue doing what I do.